almost like old times. It's just a lot harder to stand than it used to be. This morning in class, we were talking about a statement that John made, that there were some who had gone out away from them or had left, actually, as we sometimes look at it, had left the church. These were people who came up with ideas of their own and decided that some other teaching rather than the teaching of Christ is what was true. Of course, Jesus had said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. But they were teaching something different. And John said, you know the truth. Now, these people that had gone out away from the teaching of Christ were no longer what we would call disciples. The reason for that is that they were not learning from Christ. A disciple is a learner. They were not learning from Christ. They were learning from their own intuition, ideas, wherever they happened to get those. We're going to be looking at this passage throughout the morning lesson. But sometimes, even though we are Christians, we are disciples of Christ, we just, some people, I use the word we loosely here, go through certain motions. We pretend to be something that we're not. And this kind of thing is always bad for the reputation of the church. It's always bad when we're trying to influence somebody for good, and it just simply doesn't work, because people can see right through our pretense. And so what we need to do is to always follow what Jesus said sincerely. A few minutes ago we were taking the Lord's Supper, and there's always that possibility when we're taking the Lord's Supper that we're not really taking the Lord's Supper. In fact, you remember in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 20 in the American Standard Version, what I'll be reading most of the time will be the New American Standard Version. But in the Old American Standard Version, it says in 1 Corinthians 11:20, when therefore you assemble yourselves together, it is not possible to eat the Lord's Supper. Now think about that. We came this morning, and I'm going to stop in the middle of that sentence. I'm surprised at times when there are people who come only for the Lord's Supper. I'm sure that some have reason for that. And I remember a woman that I heard about when we were in Mississippi there for an important work. The wife of an elder in another congregation, a member of that congregation said that she would come in just as it was time to start, sit on her assigned seat in the back row. We do have assigned seats. And take the Lord's Supper whenever it was offered. And as soon as that was over, she would leave. This was every Sunday. Notice again. When therefore you assemble yourselves together, it is not possible to eat the Lord's Supper. She wasn't really taking the Lord's Supper. What she was doing, that is, if that was true, what she was doing was eating some bread and drinking some grape juice. There are many people in the world who think that they are disciples. They think that they're learners. I want to give you some examples of this. I talk about man-made churches frequently because they have become, in recent years, they have become one of the greatest dangers to the truth that's taught in the Lord's church. There are too many Christians who are leaving the basic, fundamental teaching of Christ and going after the teaching of man-made churches. Now, one of the things, and I think this is the most attractive to most of them, is you can believe whatever you want to. Or put it another way, it doesn't really matter what you believe. And then there are some I found out why I did that, so I'll not do it anymore if I can keep from it. There are some who say, you don't believe anything. We don't do doctrine. I don't know if you've ever heard anybody say that or not, but I heard someone a few years ago when I was studying with someone who later became a member of this congregation. He mentioned that some people in the church that he thought was a church of the Lord said, we don't teach people things. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe anything, just follow Christ. Well, that may sound good, but it's not. We like entertainment and worship. I like entertainment. In fact, I believe I'm entertained every day. I don't remember a day that I wasn't entertained in some way. But that's not in worship. Can you imagine the Apostle Paul? And by the way, I read a description of him, and I don't know if it's right or not, that he was a small, sort of a stooped over person with an ugly face and spindly legs, pretty weak as a person. We know him as a strong person. I can imagine Paul getting up before a congregation and putting on some kind of a show, soft shoe, that kind of thing. There are some people who do that. In fact, I remember, I'll get over this, so I hope you don't mind. I remember one time when I visited a Pentecostal holiness group in Kerman, California. The man who was leading the congregation in worship had a guitar in his hand, or actually a thing slung over his shoulder. He was strumming on that from time to time. And one time he let out with, and I'm not going to do it as loud as he did, Yahoo! While he kicked his leg up about this high. Now, there were a lot of people there who started paying attention to what he was saying after he did that. I guess it's okay to get attention, even though it isn't. There are people who have to have entertainment in order to, as they say, worship the Lord. There are many false doctrines. I want to just mention some of these. There's the idea of faith only. Not taught in the Bible. It is mentioned, but it's not by faith only. Some people say, we work miracles here. Well, I have been to several meetings in which people claim they worked miracles, and what they did was some deceitful practice or something that didn't work. and you can imagine the didn't work part of it. Some people say, once you're saved, you're always saved. You can't be lost. There are some Christians who act like they think that, but it's not true. There are some people who take the Lord's Supper quarterly. Lucas mentioned something along that line. And I, along with what he was saying, agree that it would be good if we could take the Lord's Supper every day. There's one church that I know of that makes it available every day. They don't call it the Lord's Supper. They call it Mass. But it's their version of the Lord's Supper. And that's not scriptural either. The use of instrumental music in worship, which seems to be the most attractive false doctrine that is creeping in, some cases not creeping, it's just jumping right into the church of the Lord today. So be careful. And if somebody says, well, I don't see anything wrong with it, help them to understand, because the scriptures are very plain on that subject. A disciple is not a one-time obeying person. It's not somebody who says, I want to obey the Lord, and then you help him obey the Lord, and that's it. That's not a disciple. He may become a Christian. The disciples were called Christians first in Antioch, Acts 11:26. He may become a Christian, but disciple doesn't mean Christian. Disciple means learner. And maybe I can do it right now. I haven't used this machine up here very much. I think this is only the second time. And in case any of you want a learning experience here, okay. I was leaning my hand on the thing that brings up the next thing. And so it thinks that I am asking a question, and I'm not. Just to say, Lord, Lord is not enough, and we know that that's what the Lord taught us. We can't just say, Lord, Lord, and expect to enter into the kingdom. You remember there were 10 men who said, Lord, Lord? 10 men who had leprosy. They said, Lord, heal us. And he said, go and show yourself to the priest. And they started going. And as they were going, they were suddenly healed. And they realized it. And one man came back and followed the Lord. The other 9, well, Jesus said, 10 were healed. Where are the 9? We often wonder that, don't we? But the Lord was saying here, it's not enough just to say, Lord, Lord. We need to learn what the Lord says. We need to do something about it. There are several in this congregation who use the telephone for good. And I want you to keep it up. The Lord wants you to keep it up. There are people who need to be contacted. Roy Butcher was mentioned in the prayer this morning. He needs our attention. I don't know if any of you have ever been, I'll use the word ill. I don't know if any of you have ever been ill before. But if you do, if you have been, you really want somebody to do something about it. There was one song that we were singing earlier that said something about a cup of cold water. If that's all you have to help someone, then use it, because it's something that God has put in your hand to do something for someone else. Now, there are primarily two things that I want us to look at this morning in the remaining bit of our time. They're mentioned on the outline if you happen to see it. One is that there are certain examples from the text that we need to look at. And the second one is there are some examples in Ephesians chapter 5 that are very important to us as Christians. And first of all, examples from the text. Christ must be first. In Luke 14, verse 26, which was read a few minutes ago, it says, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." There's the topic for today. He cannot be my disciple. That's a negative statement. But we're going to be looking at a lot of positive things that should help each one of us to remember how we can be a disciple of Christ. Jesus first involves putting away a lot of things. I notice in the picture that one of the things mentioned there is stuff. I just use the word things. And that's something that I think is very important in the life of many people. Things. Well, Jesus must be first in our life. Now, concerning the word hate, and you heard it read a few minutes ago, Jesus made another comment which I think clarifies what he said here. We use the word hate a little bit differently, and when it was translated, and it has to be translated that way, when it was translated, first of all, I really think that most people back in the 17th century, in the English language, I really think that most people misunderstood what was being said. But Jesus made the comment, "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." That's probably the way we should think of it when we read that word hate. But it emphasizes very clearly that Jesus must be first. Also, we must bear our own cross. It's not something that we can hand over to someone else. In Luke chapter 14 and verse 27, "Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." In our society, in our I don't know what I should call it right now, in our totally helping somebody society, in our society in which you can turn in many different directions and find help for any need, it's too easy for people to totally rely upon someone else for their livelihood. So we must bear our own cross. Then, another example from the text, we must renounce everything. Now, this everything we need to look at, but in chapter 14, verse 33, "So then none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all of his possessions." Have you given up all your possessions? If you are a proper scriptural steward, you can answer yes. Because you recognize fully that what you possess does not belong to you. Stewardship is an understanding that God owns everything in the world, God owns everything in the universe, and there are a few things that He has put in your possession, in my possession. And every one of those things belongs to the Lord and not to you, not to me. If we don't recognize that, we're selfish people, but we need to at all times. This particular tree, if you can call it that, mentions time and talent and treasure. And I really think that most people, some Christians, think of their treasure, their money, as being their own. Not belonging to the Lord, but their own. And they can do with it whatever they choose for their benefit. And there's an awful lot of money that's being spent today by Christians for things that are habit-forming, things that are absolutely useless, but it's my money, I can do it whenever I want to. That is the attitude that some have. There are some who bury their talents. There are some, we can just see all kinds of ways along that line, and I'm not going to dwell on that forever. Even our houses do not belong to us, but they belong to the Lord. And they are to be used as the Lord wants you to. And sometimes that involves sharing them with other people, doesn't it? And so a true steward will be aware of this. There are some examples from Ephesians chapter 5 that I would like for us to look at. First of all, we need to recognize the fact that if a word ends in ing, it's a continuing action word. I'm coming to you. If I were to say that, somebody in the other room called and I say, I'm coming. It's an action word. And it continues until it's completed, whatever that completion happens to be. And so we see a bunch of those words in Ephesians chapter 5. Redeeming the time is mentioned in Ephesians 5 verses 15 and 16 in most translations. In the New American Standard Version, it says, therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. We need to be really careful about that. Another is speaking. There are two ing words used in the same verse in this connection. That's in verse 19. Speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody with your heart to the Lord. Speaking and singing. I hope that none of us ever get the idea that singing in our worship is simply leading up to something else. It's not. It is a very important part of our expressing ourselves to God. Giving thanks is mentioned in verses 3 and 4 and in verse 20. But immorality and impurity or greed must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. And there must be no filthiness and silly talk or coarse gesture, which are not fitting, but rather the giving of thanks. Can you imagine a Christian using foul language? Paul says is not fitting. We could say even stronger than that, but that's enough, simply to say that it's not fitting. It's not right for a Christian to use that kind of language, but, he said, giving of thanks, which is very important. He also uses the expression subjecting ourselves to one another. Are you a servant? You need to be. Ephesians 5 verse 21 says, and be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. Subject to one another. I want to be the best kind of servant that is possible. You can help me. And I see some nodding their head, which means I also want to be the best kind of servant possible. You can help them also. Giving them opportunities to serve. But there is a problem there when sometimes when one Christian wants to help another Christian be a servant, and that is in becoming selfish. Let's guard against that. A disciple is a learner. I've said this, now this is the third time. Every day, there are some people who don't like to study. I found that to be true because I have taught Bible classes almost continuously now since 1977. I think I've had at least one Bible class per week, almost every week, since 1977. And I have found that there are a lot of people who don't like to study. But we need to be a learner every day. But we also need to make sure that we are learners in all circumstances. Because sometimes things can get a little bit overwhelming for us. But if I'm going to be a disciple, I need to make sure that I recognize what Jesus has said in the verses that we have read from Luke chapter 14. And we need to always be learners. If we're not, as Jesus described, we're like worthless salt. Have you ever tried to use salt that didn't do the job? Have you ever thought about that? Now, I remember a time, I believe it was at York College, but it might have been at Harding, because I was more involved with students at lunchtime at Harding than I was at York. But I may have heard about it at York. Don't know. But anyway, it doesn't matter where. But somebody took a salt shaker and a pepper shaker, mixed them together, so that if you wanted pepper, you had impure pepper. If you wanted salt, you had impure salt. I'm not advising that anybody do that. But I do know that if you would try that, you would not be doing or getting what you wanted. Now, if we are not disciples, if we're not taking up our cross daily, following Him, if we're not learning from Him daily, all the time, then we are as polluted, and there's a difference. Polluted salt. in Luke 14:34 and 35, those are the last two verses in the context of what we had listed earlier on the board. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its savor, that's the flavor, the taste. I don't remember ever coming across that. And I don't use salt anyway. That is intentional. Wherewith shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land, nor yet for the dunghill, but men cast it out. He that has ears to hear, let him hear. This is serious for all of us. I want to be like Jesus described in this passage. Is it possible that today there is among us somebody who's not a Christian? Somebody who needs to obey Christ? Jesus said, and I want to show you something here. I picked this up, by the way, I'm going to come back to Jesus saying. I picked this up somewhere, and it's titled, Where Are You Going to Spend Eternity? Good question. The word saved and saves and save is used 16 times in these 4 pages, 3.5 actually. 16 times. But did you know that Mark 16 verses 15 and 16, in which Jesus said or told how a person might be saved, is not mentioned one time? Every time that it's mentioned, it's either stated or implied that you're saved by faith only. No. What did Jesus say? He who believes, there's the faith. He who believes and is baptized shall be saved. He who does not believe will be condemned. Now, this is a lot of false teaching. But you know the truth. And if you're not a Christian, that's exactly how Jesus said that we can be saved. But is it possible that there might be a Christian here today who has not been following the Lord? They said, take up your cross daily and follow me. Is it possible that we have not been doing that? We have chosen a song that's usually called an invitation song. Some people call it a song of encouragement. Either way, it's very important for us to think about it. Because if I'm not in a saved condition, whether not being a Christian or being a Christian who has fallen away, it's a very serious condition. And so, while we're singing this song, think about your condition individually. Do you need to respond? Do you need to turn your life around and follow Christ? Because that's really what this lesson is all about. If so, would you come while we're standing?